We're snorting cap rates and shooting up cash flow here at Deal Junkies. Welcome back to Deal Junkies. I'm Gabe Johansson. I'm in the studio today with Trevor Howard, Dane McKinney, and we have a very special guest, Joe Rinderknecht. Am I saying that right? Okay, good. Yeah, Joe, right. Thanks so much for being with us. Joe is the founder of Cowboy Capital, real estate investment firm focused on acquiring and operating value-add apartment communities. You're a hands-on operator. You have about 1,000 doors with partners. You're a GP, about 40 million assets under management. Done a bunch of stuff. You're in Eastern Idaho. Did you say Rexburg you're zooming in from?
Correct.
Okay, so Eastern Idaho. If you're not watching video of this and it's just audio, Joe has an awesome mustache and cowboy hat on right now. He is a real cowboy. He grew up in the ranching world and he's doing apartments. He reminds me of a guy we talk about a lot on this podcast. Joe, thanks for being with us. I want you to take a little bit of time and take as much time as you want, but we want to get to know you a little bit. Talk about your childhood. Talk about where does this come from? What you've accomplished is amazing, and we want to know what's in your DNA. Were you raised this way? Did you always have a burning desire to be an entrepreneur? Own real estate? Give us a little backstory on what led you to where you are now.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for having me on. I'm excited to do this with you guys. And yeah, so man, take it back to the beginning. I was actually born in Rexburg, funny enough. I consider myself a Idaho because I've spent as much time in Utah as I have in Idaho.
Idaho. I like that.
But my grandpa's cattle ranch is in northern Utah. The funny thing about let's take it back to the beginning of time, right? My last name, Rinderknecht, in German actually means keeper of the herd.
Oh.
Right. So we've been ranchers since the beginning of time, pretty much. Right. And as I was growing up, we grew up on the ranch. What's kind of fun is so my dad is the oldest son, of his family. I am the oldest in my family. And so out of all my cousins that still live on the ranch, I'm the oldest, right, of all my cousins and siblings.
And you're 35, and you said, is that right?
35 in April. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so I think growing up, we learned how to work hard from a very early age, right? It's just like your cows. You have to get up. It doesn't matter if you're sick or if it's snowing and raining. Right, you learned how to get out there and take care of, the animals. You didn't eat until they ate, right? And just a lot of really good values learned out there. Your word is your bond. Relationships, reputation matters the most, right? But especially, family. But I think growing up, learning all these values and kind of starting an entrepreneurship in the way of raising cows, figuring out how much it costs to raise a steer, and then what's your spread when you sell it. And I think that's probably what got started, with the whole entrepreneurial mindset. But I think too, as I started going through high school and whatnot, I realized that I wanted more for myself than to just end up on the ranch. Right. And where as you can imagine, if you're, we're generational ranchers, right? It's I got told so many times, because my name is Odell Joe. It's actually my great grandpa and my grandpa's name. So it's there's everything generational about me, right? Long-term tradition, right? It's the tradition. I just decided I had so many people saying, you got big shoes to fill. Man, I just I want to create something for myself that people know me for. Right. And I wanted to also show my cousins that, and my siblings, you don't have to be what everybody else thinks you should be and what they expect you to be or what tradition tells you to be. Right. And so I started going into that, in high school, getting into entrepreneurship. And what's funny is my dad is actually we call him kind of the black sheep of the family, because he left the ranch for a while and went into construction, but his two brothers still live on the ranch, today. And so growing up, I was able to still learn the ranch, and I got a really good understanding of construction and like doing the manual labor, right, from doing concrete all the way to the finish work, right? So I learned a lot of good skills there. But let's see, how do we fast forward it to...
How do you go from ranch into real estate? That's what I'm wondering. Because the town you're in, how many people are in the town you're in?
Well, the town I grew up in, there was only 40 kids in my graduating class.
Yeah, so you don't really got a real estate community and investors and stuff you're seeing in a place like that.
No. So I would say like the real estate really started sparking. My dad had me read Rich Dad Poor Dad in high school. And then I don't know if you guys, if like the Ponzi, not the Ponzi schemes. What's the pyramid? What they call it?
MLM.
Yeah.
I got into a couple of those and actually had a really good mentor. I'm grateful that I didn't like really get too deep into it. But just that spirit of entrepreneurship. So I started a few small like construction businesses in high school. And then 08, 09 happened, right? And my parents had a couple spec houses and they got burned. And at that time, like I was a senior in high school in 09. I didn't really understand what was going on, nor like looking back, I had no idea what was actually going on financially with my parents. They just always hit it, right? And just, it was that whole like money doesn't grow on trees and we can't afford this, X, Y, or Z. And so as I was transitioning from high school going into college, like the tune of what my parents wanted for me changed pretty quickly. And so they started pushing me into being an x-ray tech, because, the medical industry is always in need. It's a safe, secure job. And I could always still rodeo, right? We were big in rodeo at that time.
So you ride bulls? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no. I mean, I've rode some bucking horses, but roping is more.
Roping. Oh, you're a roper. All right.
Yeah, team roper. Yeah, you can rope until you die, right? There's some good old boys that are still in their 80s and 90s out there roping, so you can do it for as long as you want, riding bulls and bucking horses. Like, I'm too old for that at this point.
So
it's a young man's game.
Yeah.
But anyways, I started going to college to be an x-ray tech because at that time too, it's like being the oldest son, like everybody looks at you and everybody expects you to be kind of this perfect poster child. And so I did what everybody else wanted me to do. And I was always so worried about what other people thought about me that I was rarely doing what I wanted to do for me because I was just trying to make everybody else happy, right? I don't know if people can, put themselves in that same situation.
People pleaser.
What's that?
A people pleaser.
Yeah, people pleaser, absolutely, to the max. And so, went to school to get the safe, secure job, and then in 2013 is when. And like I wanted to go to entrepreneurship school, but my dad just like, no, because he had a bad experience with entrepreneurship and with the real estate. And he kind of had a ranch deal gone bad with his own father. And so he just had every bad taste in his mouth when it came to business, right? And led me away from it. But it's something I always desired. And then to get to kind of your question about like, how do I get into real estate? Well, sometimes a life-changing incident is what usually makes that switch, right? So 2013, I was going to college as my second year in the medical stuff. And I was in a really bad car accident where I lost my little brother and grandma. My brother was 20. I was 21 at the time. He and I were 22 months apart. And from there, so my little brother's name is Clancy, and I've created a nonprofit we can talk about later. In his honor and his name. And Clancy, he was the rebel of the family. He didn't give a flying crap what anybody said. He would go and do things just in spite of my parents, right? He was that kid. And I was always the people pleaser, and he was the opposite But the thing that I took from him is that like anything that he wanted, he went after unapologetically, right? It didn't matter what anybody thought, he went after. And so after this accident, I realized that, you know what, I need to live for my brother now. And I need to take on a couple of his attributes, right? Which is going after what I want unapologetically and be fierce with it and just do it. And so I didn't go back to a single day of medical school after that, and actually got married 5 months later to a girl I'd been dating. And both my parents and her parents were like, no, don't do it. Because she was barely turned 19. I was 21. And they're like, you're trying to fill a void. And you're like, our mindset was, we love you, but screw you. We're doing it our way. You know, that was seriously our mindset going forward. And that's when I went into the business school. I went to Utah State in Logan, Utah, got a bachelor's in finance, minor in entrepreneurship and real estate. And that's when I really started, you know, I failed at a lot of little businesses. And then I really started getting into multifamily, into real estate specifically in 2014 and 2015.
It's a good time.
What's that?
That's a good time to get in.
It was a great time. Yeah. I mean, the first deal we bought was in 2016. It's a duplex that we house hacked. We bought it for $170,000. It was the most expensive duplex on the market at that time, but we were able to get an FHA and pretty much live for free because we lived in the basement. You know, we didn't have any kids or anything. We lived in this like 400 square foot basement, you know, and the tenants upstairs were paying for the mortgage.
So did you hear about investing in real estate through your like degree in real estate, like that minor in real estate?
Yeah. So when I was going to school, there was one of the resident mentors of the entrepreneurship program who was a real estate guy. He was a fix and flipper, and he's kind of a loan shark too. Hard money guy, right? Most people know him as a shark, but he's really the guy who kind of gave me my first start. I went and did a bunch of bird dogging for him, right? Went out and just started hitting the streets and knocking on people's doors trying to find deals for him. Granted, we never ended up getting a deal done, but I learned a lot, you know, of just real estate underwriting and you know, I've never been a shy person to just go knock on your door and ask if you want to sell. You know, there's a fun death threat story I could tell later on too about doing that.
What is a minor in real estate? Like, what do they teach you at school there?
Yeah, so they taught us, there was like development and underwriting. It was more, the classes were more like corporatized, like to set you up to go get a job, you know, doing, you know, corporate level real estate stuff. So it wasn't really about like how to source deals and how to raise money. And at that time, so I actually started the real estate club at Utah State in 2015 and 2016 because I wanted to learn it and I couldn't find, you know, another community locally to do it. So I just started the club, right, with one of my professors who owned a bunch of properties in Texas. And so like that is actually, starting that club is actually what got them to actually make the real estate classes an actual minor too. So it was kind of fun snowball effect, you know, a dozen years later, you know, it's a full blown real estate club. What I wanted it to be was to teach you how to raise money and how to vet deals. And when I left it, they kind of went corporate with it to where it's like, hey, let's help people get into jobs. But now they've came back and like professors are investing alongside with students in people's deals. So it's like everything, it is today everything I wanted it to be, right? But at that time, 2016, I was actually driving semi as well. I drove semi from 2015 to 2018 for my in-laws. And I was doing real estate and going to college and had a little baby at home in 2016. And so it's like I had 4 full-time jobs all at once. And I knew I had the desire and the vision. I think that's the other thing, like people getting into this, like it's going to take a while to like really get a lot of momentum. But if you can have that long-term vision and the delayed gratification, like that's what kept me going all these years, is just that vision of who I wanted to become, you know, when I got started.
Do you feel like you're still delaying your gratification?
Not as much. I mean, this last 18 months have been the most momentum I've had in the 10 years that I've been doing this, you know, and like we just bought pretty much our dream house this last October. Bought it on seller financing, but you know, we're kind of finally in a place that, you know, we've been dreaming about for the last 10 years.
Good for you.
So, but it's taken a decade to get here though.
Yeah.
Right?
Nobody likes to hear that part of the story. They just want to hear about the big house.
It's the truth. I think some people can cut the curve down. There's many ways that you can cut that curve down, you know, that we could talk about. But I think like if you can keep going, no matter like when the bad times hit and the struggles hit, which they will come, as long as you don't treat them as failures and you treat them as feedback and you improve upon it, then, you know, you've got a good trajectory forward.
So with that duplex that you bought, was that your first trading stock? Did you end up rolling that into bigger deals, or did you just keep going out and buying stuff?
Yeah, so we went and fixed it up, increased the rents, got a HELOC on it, used that money to go buy a fourplex, subject to the mortgage in 2017.
How'd you know how to buy subject to at that time? Because that wasn't really a popular strategy yet.
I didn't. I learned about it in like a 12-hour window. So I'll tell you the kind of story there is there was a broker in Logan. He would send out like deals that were going into foreclosure. And this fourplex was about 30 minutes west of where we were living. So like I'm very familiar with it. It's where my parents and my wife all grew up. And they were marketing this property as a duplex. It's side by side, like front and back. But they thought it was a duplex because they could only see the 2 units on the front, right? It's like townhome style. And they were marketing it for like $250,000. And I'm like, oh, I know this property really well. And I know it's a fourplex. I know nobody's going to try and get this deal as a duplex for that price, right? I just bought a duplex for $170 for crying out loud, right? The year before. And so I went and knocked on this guy's door and had no idea what he was going through. And I'm actually so grateful he never answered the door because I wouldn't know what to say. But instead, I wrote a letter and I put it on his door and said, hey, my name is Joe. I don't know if you knew this, but your property is going to auction tomorrow morning. I'm a real estate investor. I'm local. I can help you. I have no idea how to help him, but I said it. And he calls me like an hour later, tells me like his whole situation. Like he hasn't paid his mortgage for like 12 months. They're foreclosing on him. He pretty much gave up on his life because like his wife came out that she was lesbian, and it just completely ruined his world, right? Like he had like literally 12 months of like mail in his mailbox. Anyways, to make a long story short, I learned a situation, called one of my mentors, because I was doing some like wholesaling at that time with a mentor, but it's always been multifamily, which is cool. I've never really done like this house I bought is the first like single family transaction I've ever done. I've always done multifamily. But anyways, I called my mentor and I said, hey, this is the deal. This is the situation. It's going to auction. What are my chances of being able to delay the auction, and what strategy? And he's like, you got about a 1% chance of getting this done, right? And if we've all seen Dumb and Dumber, just like, so you're saying there's a chance, right?
There's a chance.
That was my attitude about it, right? And so he told me like, okay, yeah, subject to is probably something you're going to want to like learn, because like if he's deferred on his loan, what you can do is bring his loan current, and then you can take over his loan and continue to pay on his loan, right? So subject to. And so I talked to the guy again, said, okay, I think this is what we can do. If we can get a contract, we can defer the loan or defer the auction, and you and I can just work on figuring a situation out, right? Make a long story short, I stayed up that entire night. Like I said, 12-hour window, it was through the night, right? And I call him at like 7 o'clock, said, okay, this is XYZ, this is what we can do. And he comes back and says, no, I think I'm just going to declare bankruptcy. This seems too hard. I'm just like, bro, I was up all night. To make a long story short, I called the auction house and acted as if I had a contract in hand. and you know, because that's how you delay the auction, is like you're under contract, right? And I just said, hey, I've been talking with the seller. We're moving forward with this. And she's like, well, that's good because nobody showed up for the auction anyway, so we've delayed it. Like, oh, sweet. So my 1% worked, right? So for those of you out there listening, if anybody tells you have a 1% or less than a 0.5%, it's like, still go for it. You know, you just learn. And so to make a really long story short, like, this dude was on an extreme, like, emotional roller coaster. It took us about 2 months to actually get him to actually agree to it. And we ended up getting the deal done. He walked away and we took over the existing mortgage. We paid like 20 grand to bring it current, and we put about 12 grand into renovations, and we ended up holding that deal for 7 years. We bought it for $250 and we sold it for $700 in 24, so 2 years ago. And to like wrap this deal up in a nice, beautiful bow, like, I kept really good relationship with this guy over the years. And what was really cool was in 24, when we were getting ready to sell it, he called me and was like, Joe, he's like, I really appreciate, because you're right, with subject to, you keep paying on their payments, so you're helping build their credit. For 7 years, I was helping him improve his credit. So he called me and he's like, listen, he's like, I appreciate everything you did for me 7 years ago. My credit's great. I'm married again. I have a couple kids and I'm trying to buy a house. And he's like, the problem is this loan is still in my name, and the lender needs some kind of letter saying, you know, like an idea of when you're going to sell it or refinance it, so that loan's off, because it's holding up me getting a loan to buy this house. And I'm like, Matt, I sold the property yesterday. And he's like, what? And it just is amazing, like, how it all worked out, right? Like, he completely turned his life around, you know, and yeah, it was just so cool to be able to have sold that property to like help him go that next step in his life. And so we really, I'm glad I got out of my comfort zone. Glad I took the 1%, you know, when I didn't know a single thing. And, you know, it changed his life and mine for the better, right?
Joe, you've mentioned you've had a lot of mentors along the way. How did you find these mentors and talk them into taking you under their wing?
I've always believed in like finding the people that are doing what you want to do and adding value to them. So, I mean, I added value to these guys by not getting paid, right? I got paid, you know, with the wholesaling group. I brought him a couple deals. He saw my hustle and he saw that I had a great desire, and he brought me on, and we ended up wholesaling a handful of multifamily deals together. But even before, when I wanted to learn how to train reining, cutting horses, I went and mucked out stalls for a trainer to just learn and to learn how they did that. And I went and rode, you know, the rank colts that nobody wants to get on. I went and did kind of the shit work, if you will, to learn from people that were where I wanted to be. And so, like, I've done that my whole life. You know, even just a couple of years ago, I did that for 3 years to learn commercial multifamily. I want to get out of the small multi into the hundreds of units. And so, right, I went and worked for a property management company, only making 20 grand a year at a low income housing Section 42 property, just to learn the business of how operations worked, right? And went and worked for a couple groups around the country, learning the entire deal cycle from finding a deal to raising money to, you know, all the way to selling it, right? Just learning and not worrying about how much money I made, because I always believe, you know, if you put it out there, you know, good, it'll come back to you tenfold.
Yeah,
So,
you see that a lot with successful people. They're willing to take that front end hit. And with people today, like coming out of college, it's the complete opposite usually. They're like, how much are you going to pay me? And then they're not willing to do the work still. They're just there for their minimum time and trying to just get through the day and not really trying to get stuff done.
Yeah.
You talked about delaying your gratification, but we always compare now money to tomorrow money. So your active income versus your, so-called passive income or your investment income. So you were driving truck for a few years. Like obviously your wife signed along. She co-signed this madness. Yes. Like she was on board. You working 4 full-time jobs.
She didn't know what she was getting into when she married me though. She thought her and I were going to move to Texas and, go be hired hands on these big ranches. Yeah, she didn't know I was going to go full 180 on her. But I will say that she has been my greatest support since day one of kind of creating this crazy life for us. Because we've had many years where like divorce was definitely on the horizon, but she like up until now, like she's been the breadwinner. She went to college to be a CPA, and so she's been the one that's been bringing the money in for our family for the last decade, while I've been getting life's education, if you will.
And she was okay with that.
Yeah.
How were your parents? How were your parents with it? Because your parents really seemed like they had an influence on trying to steer your life, and you went in an opposite direction. Did they ultimately come around, or are they not happy about all this?
Oh, both her parents and my parents have come around. Her dad tried to get me not to do it too, but he's invested with me. And my dad and I almost bought an 80 unit here locally together last fall. Didn't end up going through. But my dad's realized by seeing what I'm doing, like he's turning, he just turned 69 and he has no retirement. He works 3 different jobs, right? And so he's realized like he needs to start buying, I was like, dude, you need to just start buying a deal a year. Like, even though you're this far down the road, 59, not 69.
I was like, dude, 69, that is a little late, but
59, sorry. Yeah.
So in the beginning, though, it's interesting that your dad was, he was trying to push you towards a safe play. But then the safe play that he played his whole life, maybe he got burned a few times and decided, it's not worth it. Just do the safe play. But then you get to 59 and you're like, well, that wasn't really the safe play, was it?
No. And the other thing, like he tried convincing me when I was getting a HELOC on my duplex back in 17, right? He was telling me, because I was telling him like, I'm leveraging my house. And he's like, Joe, you never do that. You don't leverage the house that you live in.
You pay it off.
What if, exactly. Pay it off. Like, what if the market turns? And I'm like, Dad, think about, we'll call him John, another guy in our community, right? I want you to think about John for a second. Did John get burned during 08, 09? He's like, yeah, he lost everything. And I'm like, okay, let's look at John right now. Where does he live? He lives in $1 million house, has a huge arena in his backyard, has, $30,000 horses. Like, look at John, right? He's been taking risks with real estate and construction all his life, right? Look at where he is now. Like, if we get burned and we lose everything, great, right? It just makes us more intelligent and smarter the next round, right? Because we may lose assets, we may lose possessions, but we don't lose what we learn. Mm-hmm. We don't lose our knowledge, right? And so I'm like, I'm willing to take the risk. The worst thing that could happen is I lose this house and I go move back in with my in-laws, or I get a rental, right? Like I'm not worried about that. And so I've helped him increase his risk tolerance, because my risk tolerance the last 10 years has been significantly lower. And so it's like, I feel like I'm going against the entire grain of tradition, of what our tradition within our family has taught us, right? But I'm okay being a trailblazer and showing my family what's possible, and that they don't just have to, get the 9 to 5 or just work on the ranch, to keep running the status quo. So it's been good.
Are you having fun?
Oh, I'm having a ton of fun. I love what I did.
What's most fun? You seem like somebody who's really excited to learn. Is that one of the most fun things for you, is to keep learning?
Yeah, I love learning. I enjoy doing the things that not a lot of people enjoy doing, like asset management, construction management. You never think that, guy wearing a cowboy hat would like data analytics and big data and KPIs and all these nitty gritty, things. But I love it because, the money is made after you buy the deal, not while you raise the capital and while you're doing the deal. Like, the money is made after the deal is done, right?
Operating. Yeah.
Operations, man, I love what I do. And I think the thing that I love the most about all this is the people that I get to associate with. We're creating a culture within our company where we go out and do fun things, right? Like 2 years ago, October now, we went deep sea fishing with one of our investors in San Diego, right? And you can see the two guns behind me, like the one right here is our Russian paratrooper SKS. I love taking investors just shooting. Mm-hmm. Right. And just building relationships. I think this business, and it's kind of maybe the old school way of doing it, is just like it's all about relationships and nothing else. Right. I mean, there's a lot of values within that, but relationships to us are number one, not transactions.
Yeah, we agree. Tell us a little bit about Cowboy Capital. Tell us about what does your company look like? Yeah.
So Cowboy Capital. So both my partner and my partner Levi Allen, he actually lives like 2 minutes away from me. So it's great that way. He also grew up on a big farm ranch up in Baker City, Oregon. And so we both grew up with a lot of the same values, right? Your word is your bond and your word is everything, right? Like the olden days when you shook somebody's hand, that was your word. And that was more real than writing your name on a piece of paper, right? On a piece of contract, right? Because if you don't have your word, then there goes your reputation and everything, right? Your relationships. So, and we both learned how to work hard. And Cowboy Capital, we bought our first deal in Missoula, Montana, September 30th, 2024. And Levi, he's very much the deal junkie. He deals a lot with the brokers, with lenders. He knows debt and the markets. And what's cool about both of us is neither of us have ever had a corporate job. He's got about a decade under his belt as well. We just have built our skill set by doing the thing, honing our craft, spending. I can't remember who said it, but it's like, if you can spend 1,000 hours doing something, you're gonna, be in the top 1%, right? So we've been doing that. But since 2024, since we bought that first Missoula deal, we've bought 3 more deals. We bought 3 last year. We're under contract to buy another big one right now. And so all in all, our portfolio is 4 deals, just close to 40 million. We've raised around $12 million in equity. And we're buying a 117 unit right now in San Marcos, Texas. But most of our portfolio is kind of the western front, Montana, Idaho, Utah.
Is that a student housing play?
It's all market rate.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So when you're buying these deals, you're buying them pretty far away from where you live, maybe in markets you haven't been to. How are you determining where you buy them at?
Yeah. So, the markets here, Montana, Idaho, Utah, we're a 4-hour drive from all of our properties in these 3 markets. And these are the markets that we've been playing in for the last decade individually, right? So it's like we know these markets, Boise and Missoula and Salt Lake, like the back of our hand, right? We kind of have, I like to say we have an unfair advantage against a lot of the other competition coming in, just because we have so many relationships with brokers and with, long-term owners. Like all the deals that we've bought, minus the Texas one, have all been like 10+ year owners, right? But yeah, the deal in Texas, San Marcos, we actually bought a 292 unit last September in San Marcos. So the one we're buying is just up the road from it. to answer your question, like both Levi and I have done some deals in Texas. Like I have a deal that I'm a passive investor on in Dallas right now. He's done a couple deals in DFW. He sold a $12 million deal in San Antonio. And so we kind of know those markets, you know, by doing other small deals there. And we just, there was, so Levi was so the deal in San Antonio was owned by a guy. He's actually going to prison for securities fraud because he's Ponzi scheme his investors. Mm-hmm. But he was selling this. He was trying to fire sell his portfolio, and we got in touch with this guy's biggest investor, and he said if there was any deal that you're going to save, that you should save, it's this 292 unit. And we were able to go in. We bought it for $21.5 million when the guy bought it for $25 million back in October. Mm-hmm. So it's like we weren't looking in Texas. It just fell into our lap, and we capitalized on the opportunity.
How do you manage something that far away, the one that's in Texas? You have staff on site that you manage, or do you hire property management?
We hire third-party property management, but we have boots on the ground construction, and he kind of oversees everything that we're doing there. So it was a big trust for us to go work with people that came highly recommended to us, right? Because we didn't have, I guess, the relationships directly, but through the biggest investor that he's based out of San Antonio, he recommended the property management company, and they actually came in and started operating the deal for us before we even closed for like 2 months.
So your investors are playing a kind of an active partner role in helping piece this puzzle together.
Did he stay on that deal with you?
Yeah.
So he reinvested or left his money in it?
What's that?
So he left his money in it?
Yeah. So he originally invested $4.1 million in this deal. He only got $780 back.
Ooh.
And he pulled all of it back into the deal. What's crazy is out of like a dozen deals this guy sold, this was the only deal that returned capital to investors. Everything else was a wash.
Wow.
Whoa. That's a bad day.
Don't use that guy's model.
Yeah. Man alive.
That's a bad reputation.
Oh yeah. Well, he's going to prison. So
wow.
That's
he
crazy.
Decided to use investor funds to go buy a helicopter and a jet, like these ranches, and brought in exotic animals from Africa when he was saying that he was going out and buying land, like big parcels of land, and then doing like contract for deed on parcels to other buyers. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Wow.
So these deals you're buying, like the first one you did, you're doing pretty big deals. Like that's big deal size to jump into. Were you doing other larger deals prior to that, or did you go from like that small multifamily straight into these $10 million deals?
Yeah, so we transitioned from duplex, fourplex. The next biggest was a 24 unit that we turned into a 32 unit. Bought that one in 21, and then like all of our stuff around here is in the 40 to 50 unit range. So we've got two in Missoula, one of them's 54, one in Boise, 48 units. And then, we went from kind of the 50 unit range to 292,
Wow.
So that's the biggest property Levi and or I have ever dealt with, but we've invested in and, had association with at least 100 to 150 units. So
what were the biggest learning lessons for you on that jumping that big of a jump?
Oh man, I think the biggest learning lesson that I have right now is like it's a very different market. Texas is from like Idaho and Montana, what we're used to here. Like on all of my properties here locally, like if the property manager said this unit, like I know who that is and kind of what the situation is. It's so much harder to like know every unit on the 292 unit, right? And so there's a lot more trust into like the property managers that they are going in, collecting rents and making sure that people don't skip. And so it's been a little bit steeper of a learning curve, managing property managers and and verifying, or inspect what you expect, right? And so we've been going to Texas pretty often to get boots on the ground and making sure that things are happening the way that we expect them to.
Is there any sense of anxiety around that, being that far away and not fully grasping? I mean, you talked about trust. So you obviously trust your property manager, you trust your boots on the ground that are there, right. And then you get your eyes on it pretty regularly. But does it add a level of stress that you don't get in your rest of your portfolio that's right in your backyard?
No, I'd say not necessarily. I mean, we can kind of get to that property just as quick as these other ones, just in a different, fashion, plane versus car. But no, I don't think there's any different level of anxiety because we have really good trusted, property managers and construction there. And it's just kind of using the same business model that we're using here. It's just a kind of a different situation. Occupancy in the market's different, delinquency, I don't think there's any new level of anxiety around it being there. It's just a different, you kind of use your same core model and you just have to pivot a little bit based on that market, right? And so like what I've learned, through sports and early on in business is that I tend to overthink things. And when I overthink things, I clam up. And so right now it's just like I've increased my capacity for stress and anxiety to where it's like, it's just a problem. We'll figure it out. It's okay. Like for example, two 14-year-old teenage girls decided to take one of their mom's cars for a joyride and decided to drive it right through one of our buildings, like a month and a half ago. Right. And a lot of people, like to your question, like, wouldn't that bring you a lot of anxiety? It's like, sure, there may have been some like short term, like, oh crap, now what? But it's like our property manager was on it. Our construction guy showed up that night. He had the city involved and he had structural engineers the next day. So it's like, it's all taken care of. It's like if you allow it to be too much anxiety, that's when you stop forward movement and just taking care of problems. So I try not to have.
Go. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about when you're going to these other places, like when you first took your leap into Texas. How did you study that market? How did you underwrite did you look at population growth and income and spend some time there, try to figure out who's building what and what's going out of business, what's going into business? Like can you give us a little bit of a picture there of how you got comfortable with that market?
Yeah, I think with that market and any other market is getting in there and talking to the people who know it best, right? That's other business owners, that's city officials, right? We've had conversations with, like brokers are going to be, I think, one of your biggest resources, right? In knowing what's going in, because like brokers that are selling in that market, they know, right? They've got to be able to sell, hey, this is why this market's growing or why rents are increasing, right? So we spent a lot of time on the phone with multiple different brokers and like with our insurance and property manager, just getting to know that market better, right? Because like here locally, it's like we can drive there pretty dang quick and, go meet with people face to face. With Texas, we had to get on the phone with a lot more people and really understand kind of the market metrics and what was coming in and, like the diverse, because we have a pretty diverse like employment industry there. You got Texas State University. They just brought in like 14,000 new students, right? And Amazon has a hub there and they're building another Buc-ee's right down the road from it. So it's just like getting all this industry knowledge of like all of these things that will impact our property. And I think another big thing, like when you talk to the city is like, okay, how many units were delivered the last couple of years, right? And at that property, just under 2,000 units were delivered. And so there's still a fair amount of absorption happening right now. So occupancy is like in the mid to high 80s, right? And right now there's only 2 projects under construction, which is under 500 units. So we've seen that supply go down, right? And there's not a lot of deliveries on the horizon. So I think to answer your question simply is, when you're looking at deals, you need to ask yourself and be true to yourself, what are the highest risks of these deals, and how do we mitigate those by going out and it's like going out and figuring out, okay, when do we think we can stabilize this property? When will our occupancy increase? Like what jobs are coming in? Like these are all things that you need to know to mitigate the risks on the deal. I think that's really what it comes down to, is protecting investor capital and making sure that you're mitigating all of those risk factors. So
yeah. And then you mentioned,
did I answer your question?
Yeah. So you raised like $12 million in the last 18 months, which is very impressive because a lot of people have not wanted to invest in real estate and been scared of real estate during this period of time. So how did you go about doing that?
Relationships, man. We have not had an issue raising money. On that one Texas deal, we raised $6 million with 8 investors. And the biggest check on that was $2.5 million. And I've known the investor on that for 7 years. Right, he's a fund of funds guy. He raised $2.5 million, probably from 30 or 40 people of his own investors. He brought me one check. Right, the next check was $1.1 million from a kind of a self-proclaimed family office. It was three siblings, and I've known them for like about the same time, 6-7 years. When I got into the industry, I cold called everybody and their dog. Right, and so they had a 20-plex just up the road from where I lived. And so like I've just been pleasantly persistent over the years, and they finally said, hey, we're actually selling a deal. Like, we've been watching what you're doing. You've been telling us for all these. I haven't bought the 20-plex yet. It will happen one day, right? Long-term vision. It will happen, especially now they've invested with me and they love what's happening, right? And then, so like multiple investors that came in on that deal are people that I've had relationships with since I started in the game. Like one of my general partners on that deal that helped sign on the loan, I met him in like a dungeony basement real estate event before I'd owned a single thing. I just said, he was a business owner in the area. It's like, I buy multifamily, hadn't bought a single thing yet. And this was his first deal with me. So it's building those long-term relationships over the years and having that long-term vision that they may not invest today, tomorrow, next year, in the next 5 years, but one day they will,
So the last 42 months, Joe, has been, in my opinion, one of the hardest real estate markets, at least commercial real estate, that we've seen in my lifetime, especially my career. With like you're talking about, vacancy is high. We've had a lot of deliveries. A lot of our markets around us have been overbuilt, and it feels harder. Expenses are going up, rents are going down. Interest rates are obviously higher. So if you have loans coming due, there's just a lot of pressure on us today. But you've said that you've picked up a ton of momentum over the last 18 months. Can you speak a little bit to kind of the pain of the last few years, and then maybe to how you played that to your advantage? Because you're obviously running opposite the pack, where some people are sort of like hiding out right now. You're going the opposite direction.
Oh yeah, we're going balls to the wall, man. We're trying to buy as much as we can, just because we see a huge opportunity. I think with anything, like if you try to use the same strategies today that you used yesterday or this year that you used last year, like you're going to lose, right? You have to be willing to quickly pivot based on market sentiment and investor sentiment. So yeah, I'll take you kind of on a quick journey. 21 to 24, I had that 24-plex. We bought it for $2 million, but we were turning it into a 32 unit, right? It's a 1951 build property, so pretty old, had a lot of skeletons in the closet. I was a minor partner on that deal, and I got in on that deal with 2 other guys that I'd known for quite a while through another real estate community. And the 2 things that we did wrong at that time, one that we didn't know was going to be a problem, right, was we put a construction budget together based on what we thought it would cost, right? But when you have an old property like this and has asbestos and lead-based paint and all these things, it's like there's so many skeletons in the closet that you don't expect. And plus we were renovating like to the gills, like down to the sheetrock, right? Or lath and plaster in this situation, right? And then that's about the time, right, that interest rates shot through the roof, right? And we had a variable construction loan. So our debt went from 5% up to 10.5%, right? And so luckily banks were willing to work with you at that time. And we did a couple loan mods, to just get us through it. But for that 3 years, I didn't do a single deal outside of that. I lived 45 minutes from the property. So like my partners and I, we got taken for a ride on construction because it was 2 buildings. They were 2 12-plexes that we were going to make to 16 units. She said that she could do all of them, and she really only had the bandwidth to do like 3. So the problem was we didn't have the right contractor to come in and do the work. We budgeted $1.5 million. At the end of the day, it cost us $3 million in construction cost. Whoa. Right? So it's like the deal went sideways really quick for all the reasons. But what we did was we showed up 3 to 5 days a week, and we swung the hammer. And we were the one that foremaned out and dealt with a bunch of subcontractors, right? So that was one of those time periods where I was saying, like, I'm so grateful for my wife because she was feeding the family. And, that was probably the closest time to where we were close to divorce, right? Because it was such a rough period of time. But I'm so glad that I stuck it out because I had family money in that deal. Some of my investors were family. And what ended up happening is, and this is all going back to your question of like, how has it been easy, is because that deal, even though it went sideways, like set me up for now, because when things go bad, you see people's true colors, I think, right? And I'm not trying to put a limelight on myself or make myself feel better, but when it got tough, like we showed up and we made it happen, right? When things got tough, we showed up, we swung the hammer to make sure it didn't go in foreclosure. The one thing I wish we'd have done differently is communicated with investors transparently and clearly what was going on, because when we were just about to be foreclosed on because we couldn't pay, we ran out of money for construction, right? And we needed to do a loan mod. And so my partners, they didn't believe in telling investors what was going on, and apologize if you guys are listening to this, it's just the fact. But when we were right at the end, like where we were going to lose the property, I reached out to the biggest investor who was not my investor and just said, look, this is the situation. This is actually what's going on that we haven't been telling you. We're about to lose it. Like, he could have sued us for negligence, right? And sometimes you just have to be willing to have those fierce conversations no matter what, and not knowing the results of what could come from it. But what came from that is the investors gave us grace. We did like $1 million capital call. We got the project done. And when we sold it in 24, we were able to get a full return of capital, 100% return of capital to investors. We bought it for $2 million, put $3 million into it, and sold it for $6.25 million. Right. So it was good because, like, in 24, right, people were losing equity, right? It's like 60% to 100%, wipe of equity, with some of operators out there. But what came from that was investors saying, like, hey, Joe's willing to show up and make things happen if things go sideways. And I learned from that conversation that have fierce conversations no matter the result. And so now one of our greatest values of Cowboy Capital is we run out the bad news and walk out the good news. And what really came of that is a long-term relationship with the investor. So the guy who came in that I had that conversation with, he ended up rolling his $800,000 that he put in that deal from the Utah deal that we sold to the one that we bought in Montana. And there was a 4-day difference from the sale to the purchase of the new one. Wow. Right. And since then, he's invested over another $1.5 million with us. He's referred over $1 million to close to $1.5 million of investor capital to us from his cousins who are surgeons. And he's on our board of directors. right? So the reason I think that it's been easy for us when it's been tough for everybody else is that it goes back to the relationship and who you choose to show up as when things get tough, right? And so like lots of people, try and show, the sunshine and rainbows on social media, and we're like, we'll show you everything that's raw. It's like, we are raw, right? We're not, we've never had corporate jobs. We don't really know how to be the fancy guys in suits and, trying to be crisp with our communication and our language. It's just like, we just show up who we are. And I think people really like that. So like a lot of our investors are, blue collar millionaires and farmers and ranchers. And, we have a lot of like hardworking people that are investors that really just appreciate who we are and I think our level of transparency too. Like anything that an investor wants from us, if they want to see your bank statements, within 10 minutes, you'll have bank statements. Like, we will not hide a single thing. If you want something from us that you can't already see, we have it to you within that day, and I think too, like, we pivot as quickly as we need to with our investor returns and how we present the deal to investors,
So as you're structuring these deals, what does the typical structure and return target look like for investors?
Yeah. So, I mean, our typical, like most of the deals, we will, like the Texas deal that we did a 10% preferred return, and I think our highest was a 70-30 split. So 10 pref, 70-30. Your typical, like most people will just do this across every deal, like 8% pref, and then 70-30 up to like an 80-20 split, right? So depending on kind of what's going on in the market, like our first deal that we did in Montana, at that time, like there was a lot of like debt funds out there giving investors 10-12%, right? And there's a lot of volatility in the market, and there's a lot lower risk with those, with like the first position hard money loans. And so we had a hard time at first raising the money, but we pivoted really quickly to where we did a full pref equity raise, right? Where people just felt good about it. So like we have a weighted average 15% preferred return, excuse me, to investors.
Big bone.
So when you say weighted average 15, how do you get there off the 10% pref?
Yeah, so some investors got a 12 pref, and like Bryant, our biggest investor, he rolled 800, like he got a 17%.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right, so we have different waterfalls.
Mm-hmm.
So like on this deal, it's all preferred equity, meaning you're just getting like that 15%, that weighted average 15, but you're not getting any upside.
Gotcha.
Right. So all the upside is like goes to Levi and I, but we also have $650,000 invested in that deal as common equity, right? So all these investors are second to the bank. We're the first ones to lose our money if things go sideways, but they get pretty much that guaranteed, 10% current pay. So we pay, right, that 10% and then 5% on the back end. So they're getting pretty much a guaranteed return through the life cycle of that deal, right? And so we've done that full pref equity to where the newest deal, our investors, they just want higher like splits on the back end. So we're not even doing a pref on the newest deal. And we're just doing a performance split of like 85-15 as the highest split, right? And we have to raise 2.9, and as of this morning we're at like 2.55 with 5 investors, and they're all returned. So
it's getting easier.
Yeah. Well, and the thing we like to do too is we like to have fewer checks if possible. Like, so Levi, his last deal that he did before he and I joined up, it was a 54 unit Salt Lake. He raised $3 million with like 33 investors.
Whoa.
Right. And so like they're 50K, 100K checks, but like our average check size right now across the last 4 deals is in the mid 300s, with the biggest check being $2.5 million. The reason we like these bigger checks is like $6 million raise. We have 8 investors. If you were to be, say you would have brought $1 million, we can treat you more as a partner than an LP investor. When you have 30 investors on a small raise, it's so tough to go and have a conversation with every single investor saying, hey, this is what we're thinking. Oh, we're going to do a refinance, or, this is what's going wrong. Do you have any resources? So it gives us the ability to treat investors more as a partner, because a lot of people, right, when it was going bad, people got really gun shy of doing multifamily because distributions were paused. Capital, like equity, was just completely wiped out, or they've done capital calls and even that equity got wiped out, right? So people got super gun shy. But the way that we kind of reverse that psychology is we're going to treat you as a partner. Even though you're signing as an LP and you don't have voting rights, we're going to get on the phone with you and we're going to say, hey, does this fit with your strategy? Does this fit with where you're at right now? Right? So we're going to treat them more as a partner. We're going to make sure that they feel heard. At the end of the day, Levi and I will make the overall decision, but it helps knowing where our investors are at and where they're at, like in life, and from an investment perspective. And the other thing that we've learned too from our investors is like they have a completely different skill set than we do. So maybe we go talk to, John over here, and we're like, hey, we need, like our insurance is killing us. Maybe he has an insurance guy that can actually, knock our rate down by 20%, right? So we leverage our relationships because they have, like, their relationships are now our relationships, right? And so we leverage that, and it has helped significantly. So like that $12 million that we've raised is 30, I think it's about 30 investors.
Wow.
Would you say, you were saying your balls to the wall, would you say that right now is the best buying opportunity that we've seen in our generation?
I think so. I actually don't. I'll come from a mindset of abundance. Yes, I think there's lots of opportunity to buy multifamily right now because we just were at a conference in Salt Lake, the best ever conference. I don't know if you guys have heard it.
Yeah.
But we pitched actually there for their pitch competition. But what we learned from there is one of like a multifamily industry leader, Jay Scott. He's talking about how right now, right as like interest rates have gone up, prices to build have gone down. So like there's been a lot of supply. We're starting to come at the bottom of that, where all of that supply on a national level is starting to get absorbed, right? And we're starting to see that a little bit more as units are being absorbed. So the mindset is that going forward, we have much fewer deliveries coming online across kind of a national level. And so what's going to happen is the demand has not changed, right? And we're becoming even more of a renter nation than we are purchasing, right? It's becoming tougher, which really, I really feel for the generation under us, because it's so tough to go and buy a house right now, affordable, right? And that's why renting is really kind of become more, evident and prominent versus purchasing. But yes, I think now is a perfect purchasing opportunity because, those with the supply coming down and deliveries coming down, more deals are going to be coming online. And with interest rates in the 5-year and the 7-year treasury, they're coming down too. So it's like you can get into a loan right now. So like the deal that we're buying right now, we're buying it at a 6.5% interest rate, where the deal we bought 6 months ago is a 7.95, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunity coming online. And the other reason why is because there's a lot of people that still have that bad taste in their mouth with multifamily, and like triple net for some reason is becoming like the new hot word, right? Like at this conference, multiple multifamily guys. Yeah, I'm not doing multifamily anymore. It's too cyclical. It's too volatile. We don't know where the bottom is. We're going to triple net. Like, please do that, man. Like, you go do that. More deals for me, because right, we just have blinders on, and we're just going all in. And kind of like what we talked about before the call, is these mom and pop owners aren't getting any younger, and they're finally starting to come around and be like, hey, I can't, like, even though I don't want to give money to, the government, my mental sanity and, going and being a do-it-yourself landlord, I don't want to do it anymore, right? It's not worth that. The juice isn't worth that squeeze anymore. And so like all of the deals, like I said, minus the Texas one, were all owned by 10 plus year owners. The Texas deal we're buying right now, the owners have had it for 20 years, right? 20 plus years. They bought it in 2007. So I guess right at 20 years, right? So we see a lot of buying opportunities, and right now we're trying to buy a 75 unit in an area next to us, and they built it 30 years ago, right? Wow. So it's like we're going there's going to be some bank distress as well, I think, but like the mom and pop owners, I think if you could go after deals that are 10 plus year owned, non-owner occupied, well, of course they're going to be non-owner occupied, but like out of state owners, there's going to be a lot of opportunities there. But also from a debt perspective, there's a lot of deals from operators who bought at the top in 21 and 22. These guys that bought with 3% interest rates, during COVID, their deals are their 3-year, 4-year terms are coming up, right? And values are down, so they're going to have to do cash in refinances. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, those guys can't do it. And so either we're looking at a couple like Class A core deals right now that we're going to be able to get as a short sale or for the loan amount, right? And so, for example, if you don't mind me saying, there's like a 300 some odd unit in Salt Lake called Harvest at Marmalade. They built it for around 90 million. They sold it for 120, and it's a 23 build, and they just put it on the market to sell at the loan amount, right? So it's like $30 million wipe of equity, and they couldn't get a single offer above like the low 80s. So the bank took it back. The bank took possession, complete wipe of equity. And the reason that happened is because of like what you're talking about with like supply in like Salt Lake. There's still like the absorption is a little lagging there. But they're doing like this property was doing 3-month rent concession, like 3 months free and a $3,000 gift card.
Oh,
right. So if you can imagine how does that help your debt service? Mm-hmm. It doesn't.
Hits the bottom line.
So and that's why people couldn't get aggressive with price, because you're going in cap rate 2-3% with like really, we're still probably a year or 2 years out before those rents on like that deal specifically or in that market start to come back up. Mm-hmm. And so it's like we're starting to see more distress like that. And if like we're happy to go and buy in those markets, because now you can buy it for less than the loan amount. And you get to reset your basis, $30-40 million in that situation below what the last guy bought it for.
Yeah.
So those are the two opportunities we're looking for right now, is just these mom and pop shops that are just ready to be done. And these, cash in refi guys that they just can't hang on anymore. And the lenders are tired of doing loan modifications, and they got to get it off their balance sheet.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yes, it's an amazing time to buy.
We could talk all day. We're going to come back. We're going to end this one, Joe, and then we're going to come back and talk deals if you have a little bit of time. Does that work for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Odell Joe Rinderknecht with Cowboy Capital. Boy, it's been fun hanging out with you today. If somebody wants to reach out to you, it sounds like you're a guy that's willing to share some knowledge, help make some connections. How would somebody find you?
Yeah, so I'm mainly on Instagram and LinkedIn. You can just find me, Joe Rinderknecht, on there. My website, cowboycapital.us, and you can email me, joe@cowboycapital.us.
All right, Joe, thanks for being on the show today. Deal Junkies, we love you. Please share us with someone you love, and we'll see you next time.